competition. Let me start with Mr. Kerr. In which of the London boroughs is the Tower of London situated, Mr. Kerr?
The City of London.
No. Mr. Greensmith?
Tower Hamlets.
Yes, you're right, Tower Hamlets. And it's your turn again. What was the nickname given to the controversial budget introduced by Lloyd George in 1909?
No, I don't know.
No? Anyone have a go at that? Mr. Cairns?
The People's Budget.
Yes, it was called that. New Mr. Cairns again. What did the M stand for in ex-President Richard M. Nixon's name?
Millhouse.
It did. Which group of birds includes the largest members of the parrot family? Time's running on. You don't know, Mr. Colby?
I'll have a go at the cetaceae.
No. Yes, Mr. Kerr.
The macaws.
You're right, sir. The macaws. Well done. Mr. Colby, what animal is the distinguishing badge of a Queen's messenger?
A lion.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Fox.
No. Mr. Greensmith?
Greyhound.
A greyhound is right, a silver greyhound. And now that brings us to the end of our opening round. Mr. Colby has yet to score. 1 to Mr. Kerr, 2 to Mr. Greensmith, and 2 to Mr. Cairns. Mr. Kerr's turn. What is the horticultural meaning of precocious?
Appearing early in spring.
No, Mr. Kerr. Mr. Greensmith?
The flowers come out before the leaves.
No, it isn't that. Mr. Colby?
It simply means early flowering.
Yes.
If you take rhododendron precox, that's called that because it's the first flowering of the rhododendron family.
Yes, it flowers, as you quite rightly say, precociously.
Yes.
It flowers off fruits early, not
Yes.
early in the spring, Mr. Kerr, but just early. Mr. Greensmith's turn. Who was the Israeli Minister for Foreign Affairs at the time of the negotiation of the peace treaty with Egypt?
General Dayan.
Right. What battle is sometimes known as the Battle of the Three Emperors? Mr. Greensmith. Mr. Kerr?
Austerlitz.
Yes. Austerlitz or Austerlitz, yes. Mr. Cairns, what is the group name for certain stone fruits such as plums and peaches?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. Mr. Colby?
Prunus.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Droops.
Droops is right. Mr. Colby, what is the essential difference between cameo and intaglio?
A cameo is a carving on the surface of the stone, and intaglio is dug out of the stone.
I think that's right. Yes, the cameo is the design is in relief. That is to say, it stands up.
Yes.
And intaglio is actually carved within it, sunk in a sense. 5 countries border the Republic of South Africa to the north. Southwest Africa, Namibia is one, Zimbabwe, Rhodesia another, and Botswana the third. Can you name one of the other 2?
Mozambique.
Yes, and you have Swaziland also. What was Operation Dynamo in the Second World War, Mr. Colby?
Was it the retreat from Dunkirk?
It was. Who said, the greatest pleasure I know is to do a good action by stealth and to have it found out by accident?
Charles Lamb.
He did. What is the largest lake in area entirely within the Soviet Union?
The Caspian Sea, I should say.
No, Mr. Kerr?
Lake Baikal.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Lake Balkash.
No. Can Mr. Greensmith have a go?
And all the ones I was thinking of have gone.
Well, the answer is the Aral Sea. And that brings us to the end of that second round, and the scores are now 2 to Mr. Cairns, 3 to Mr. Greensmith, 3 to Mr. Kerr, and 5 to Mr. Colby. Which ocean washes the shores of Mauritania, Mr. Kerr?
The Atlantic.
It does. Who was the Danish physicist who, when Einstein was complaining God doesn't play dice, is supposed to have said, stop telling God what to do?
Niels Bohr.
Right. Listen to this music.
If I rule the world, every day would be the first day of spring. Every heart would have a new song to sing.
that song was from the musical Pickwick, starring Harry Seacombe, and which is as much to admit that we couldn't find an extract from the actual opera we want to ask a question about. That's to say, who wrote the opera Pickwick, which was produced in London in 1936?
William Walton.
No. Yes, Mr. Greensmith.
Arthur Bliss.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Benjamin Britten.
No. Mr. Colby?
Michael Tippett.
No, it was Albert Coates. Mr. Greensmith, what is the name of the boy who is the narrator of Salinger's novel, The Catcher in the Rye?
I don't know.
You don't? You're very sure of that. Mr. Cairns?
Holden Caulfield.
You're right for you. It's your turn again, Mr. Cairns. In what country is the birthplace of Henry Morton Stanley, the explorer and journalist who discovered Dr. Livingstone in 1871? Yes, discovered him, I suppose, or rediscovered him.
Wales.
Wales is right. What organisation in the general area of transport, having the initials BAA, what is its full name?
British Airports Authority.
You're right. What is the dole of the Tichborne dole?
Is it a leg of bacon?
And it's usually that sort of thing, isn't it? Or they run with it, or they toss it up and down in a frying pan. But no, that's not the answer. I wonder if anyone else can... Mr. Kerr?
£5.
No, it's often something like that, a sort of dole left to be distributed among the deserving poor.
Is it several loaves of bread?
No, Mr. Colby, it isn't several loaves of bread. That's also another likely contender. Who hasn't had a go? Mr. Greensmith.
Let's try a rent-free house.
It could be that. It is flour. That's Flour. Very near Mr. Colby, but it's actual flour, and it's distributed to the villagers of Tichborne in Hampshire. What, Mr. Colby, what modern state traces its origins to an alliance called the Everlasting League? Out of time?
Tremendous idea.
Have a guess, Mr. Cairns? Oh,
Spain.
perhaps you know.
Spain.
Not Spain. Mr. Greensmith?
Poland.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Germany.
No, it's Switzerland. Let me tell you the scores. 3 to Mr. Greensmith, 5 to Mr. Kerr, 5 to Mr. Cairns, 5 to Mr. Colby. Neck and neck. Mr. Kerr, what is the Pacific island of Tahiti's largest town called?
Port-au-Prince.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Papeete.
Yes, Papeete, as they've carefully spelled it out with hyphens between it for me on this script, rather like that comic Chick's Own, which you won't remember, you're far too young. Mr. Greensmith, Tahiti is one of several other islands in that part of the world which are administered by which country?
France.
You're right. Gyges, an ancient king of Lydia, had a magic ring. What power did it give him?
To tell whether people were telling the truth or not.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Invisibility.
It did, you're right. Mr. Cairns, Sir Walter Scott's novel Kenilworth describes the ancient castle during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. Whose home was it at that time?
Lord Cecil.
No. Mr. Colby.
The Earl of Leicester.
You're right. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. Your turn again, Mr. Colby. Where in the British Isles is the island of Tiree?
It sounds as if it must be off the coast of Ireland.
No. Mr. Kerr?
In the Hebrides.
Yes, in the Inner Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. Let's see how those scores now stand. 4 to Mr. Greensmith, 6 to Mr. Cairns, 6 to Mr. Colby, 7 to Mr. Kerr. Occasionally one gets a nose ahead and then another. Mr. Kerr, can you name one of the 2 new Knights of the Garter announced in April?
Sir Michael Swan.
No. The others know? They shake their heads. It's Lord Hunt and Sir Paul Hasluck, who was former Governor-General of Australia. Mr. Greensmith, which is the second stroke in a 4-stroke internal combustion engine?
Compression.
It is. What character in fiction had 2 friends called Coming and Going, who took great offence when he made a pun on their names? Cummings, I should say, and Going. So pronounced. They'd have to be so pronounced, otherwise this pun wouldn't take place.
No, I don't know.
You don't know, Mr. Kerr?
Mr. Pooter.
You're right. And of course the pun is that doesn't it seem odd that going's always coming and coming's always going? At which everyone groaned very loudly. Mr. Cairns, which two epistles in the New Testament comprise the pastoral epistles?
The Romans and the Galatians.
No. Mr. Colby?
So the two epistles to Peter.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Epistles of John.
No. Mr. Greensmith?
The epistles of Timothy.
No. It's epistle to Titus and epistle to Timothy. If we'd asked for one, you would have got it, but we asked for two. Mr. Colby, who won the World Professional Snooker Championship, which was competed for in Sheffield earlier in the year?
I've forgotten his name. I think he beat Ray Reardon, but
No.
I've forgotten his name.
You have. Mr. Kerr?
Terry Griffiths.
Yes, Terry Griffiths. And now the scores. 5 to Mr. Greensmith, 6 to Mr. Cairns, 6 to Mr. Colby, 9 to Mr. Kerr. Ideas on European prehistory have been revolutionized by work done on discoveries which were made at a site called Vinca and a mine at Rudna Glava. Mr. Kerr, in what country are they?
Czechoslovakia.
No. Mr. Greensmith?
Hungary.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Yugoslavia.
Yes, Yugoslavia. Mr. Greensmith's turn. What is the unit of currency in Ghana?
No.
No?
Right, yeah.
Mr. Cairns?
The KD. The KD. C-E-D-I.
Yes, I think it's pronounced Cedi, but Kidi, why not? Probably the modern pronunciation, as in Latin. Whose turn is it now? It's Mr. Cairns again. What mythical creatures were sometimes said to have been the descendants of Ixion and a cloud?
I'll take a guess and say the Furies.
No? Mr. Colby?
The Danaids.
No? Mr. Kerr?
The Nymphs.
No? And Mr. Greensmith shakes his head. The centaurs. Now it's Mr. Colby's turn. Here is some music. First, if you listen to it, I'll ask you a question after. Well, that is the music of one country worked and developed and elaborated by a composer from another country. Who was the composer?
Is it Lalo Symphony Espanol?
No. Mr. Cairns?
Kodai.
No. Yes, Mr. Kerr?
Ravel.
No? Can Mr. Greensmith do it?
No.
It's Rimsky-Korsakov, and it was Capriccio Espagnol. And the scores, 5 to Mr. Greensmith, 6 to Mr. Colby, 8 to Mr. Cairns, and 9 to Mr. Kerr. Now we have a couple of questions from a listener, and as ever, she aims these questions, it's a she in this case, at all of you working together. Miss A. Wheeler of Shanklin, the Isle of Wight. The first question: prior to the union of the Crown in 1603, there were 6 kings of Scotland named James. What had they in common with each other and with Mary, Queen of Scots, apart from the fact that they were all Stuarts? Now, you put your heads together and
Very young.
contrive an answer. Mr. Cairns?
I think all of them came to the throne at a very early age.
I think that will do. They were all minors. They were all under the age of 21. So you got that right. Who wrote, and in what work? "'Tis not in mortals to command success, but we'll do more, Sempronius, we'll deserve it."
Tune.
Titus Andronicus is not. I think we'll hazard a guess and say Shakespeare, Titus Andronicus.
No, it was Joseph Addison. So, you got one bit of it right. Miss Wheeler got the other bit right. That means she's won.
And what work?
What? The work was Cato. Act 2. But it's no good. You can't wrest the prize away from Miss Wheeler. Try as you will. She's going to get a book token or a record token, and we say 3 cheers. And I should say at this point that next week, when we have our final, there's not going to be any beat the brains, as we call this little section, because we're going to devote all the time to the final as well we might. We take this opportunity to thank all the listeners who've sent in questions. They may think they've gone astray in the posts, but they haven't. It's just that it would cost far too much of their money for us to acknowledge them. But anyway, I thank them cordially. Now, Mr. Kerr, Bach, J.S., Handel and Domenico Scarlatti were all born in the same year. Which year was that?
1685.
It was. The word planet is derived from a Greek word meaning what?
Wanderer.
Correct. The Ring of Fire is the world's main area of earthquakes and volcanic activity. Where is it?
It includes Japan and the East Indies.
No. Mr. Cairns?
The Middle East, Persia, Afghanistan,
No.
Pakistan.
Mr. Greensmith?
Is it around the whole of the Pacific Ocean?
Ah, that's the answer. Well done. Bits of it are here and there, but it's all round the Pacific Ocean. Mr. Greensmith, with what organization or group do you associate the courts of Shepway, Brotherhood, and Guestling?
Heraldry.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Masonic institution.
No. Mr. Cairns shakes his head. Mr. Colby, do you know?
Undefined.
No, it's the Cinque Ports. Now it is Mr. Cairns' turn. Who was Charles Lamb describing when he wrote, "His face when he repeats his verses hath its ancient glory, an archangel a little damaged"?
We'll hazard a guess at Southey.
No, Mr. Colby.
Coleridge in a letter to Wordsworth.
Well done, sir. Coleridge indeed. Now it's your turn again. In archery, the gold is the bullseye, the center of the target, scoring 9 points. What is the next highest scoring color?
Purple.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Red.
It is red. That brings us to the end of the round. And the scores now are 6 to Mr. Greensmith, 7 to Mr. Colby, 8 to Mr. Cairns, and 12 to Mr. Kerr. In 1896, Mr. Kerr, Sir Wilfrid Laurier became the first what?
Governor General of Canada.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Prime Minister of Canada.
Ha ha. No. I tell you why I'm laughing in that satanic way afterwards. No. Can anyone do it?
Prime Minister of Quebec and Ottawa, Newfoundland.
No, that was Mr. Colby there. No. Mr. Greensmith? Have a go at it?
Prime Minister of Ontario.
No, you're all manoeuvring closer and closer. The first French-Canadian Prime Minister of Canada, and that's the bit we were looking for. Mr. Greensmith, how did Sir Francis Chantrey make the money that he left to the Royal Academy and the Chantrey bequest? In short, what was his occupation?
Was he a merchant?
No. Mr. Kerr?
Shipowner.
No. Mr. Cairns?
A mine owner.
No.
An art dealer.
No, Mr. Cole. All money-making occupations, aren't they? He was a sculptor. There was a lot of money in sculpture in those days. He did portrait statues and busts. He knew what was what. Mr. Cairns, what is the only seaport of any significance in the Sudan?
Port Sudan.
It is. What is an irrational number?
A number which can be arrived at as the result of a mathematical calculation, but doesn't really exist.
No, that isn't it, Mr. Cairns. Can the others, any of the others, try it? An irrational number is one whose value is not known precisely and can't be expressed in finite terms like, say, roots and pi, and there are other things as well. Can you tell me now, Mr. Colby, who originally wrote Mais où sont les neiges d'antan? Or who gave it its familiar English translation? But
Francois
where are the
Villon.
snows of yesteryear?
Francois Villon.
Wrote the first one, you're perfectly correct. And the translation, if you
It's
want...
where are the snows of yesterday?
Yes, but who gave it the currency, which was your alternative, was Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Certainly you're right, Francois Villon. In the preparation of what would Scotch hams have been used?
Haggis.
No. I mean, they are in a sense, but wait and see. Mr. Greensmith?
I wonder if it's something to do with a bridge tournament.
No, it isn't. I see what you mean, Mr. Cairns.
Butter.
Butter is right, Mr. Cairns. But you could tell us why.
It's another expression for pats, butter pats.
Yes, those little bats that they used to have in the dear, good, dead days beyond recall. The scores: 6 to Mr. Greensmith, 8 to Mr. Colby, 10 to Mr. Cairns, 12 to Mr. Kerr. Mr. Kerr, what is unusual about many of the paintings of Giuseppe Arcimboldi?
They're made up of vegetables and such like things to make human faces.
They are, indeed. What is the name of the volcano that has been causing great trouble on the island of St. Vincent?
Rorotua.
No. Mr. Colby?
Soufriere.
Soufriere is right. Mr. Greensmith, what contribution did John Piper make to the new Coventry Cathedral?
He engraved some glass in a big window.
Yes. You don't say the name, the baptistry window, but he did all that you say he did. What was the first feature film to be made in CinemaScope?
The robe.
It was. What is the name of the body which oversees the national parks in England and Wales?
The National Parks Commission.
No. Mr. Cairns?
The Countryside Commission.
Yes. It replaced the National Parks Commission in 1968. Bad luck, Mr. Greensmith. Mr. Cairns, what book has the alternative or subtitle, Mr. Saltina's Plan? Mr. Kerr?
The Young Visitors.
Yes, by Daisy Ashford. Mr. Colby, what kind of skiing is sometimes called Nordic skiing?
Is that the type of skiing where the people are sort of doing it on the flat rather than down hills?
I'm inclined to give you that. It's cross-country skiing, and
Yes.
it's really walking across the land
Yes.
on skis,
Yes.
and much of it will be flat.
Yes.
What two navies fought the Battle of Camperdown, Mr. Colby?
The English and the Dutch.
Right. To what country does Jan Mayen Island belong?
Denmark.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Norway.
Yes, Norway. And that brings the end of that particular round. The scores: 8 to Mr. Greensmith, 11 to Mr. Colby, 12 to Mr. Cairns, 14 to Mr. Kerr. This next round is our final round in this semi-final. From whose writings, Mr. Kerr, did the expression "a thorn in the flesh" come? Find its way into the language, so to speak.
Milton.
No. I wonder if the others can have a go. Mr. Greensmith?
How about Tom Paine?
No. Mr. Colby?
William Congreve.
No. Mr. Cairns?
St. Paul.
It is St. Paul. You're right. Mr. Greensmith? In what country are the ruins of the ancient city of Leptis Magna?
Syria.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Turkey.
No. Mr. Kerr?
Greece.
No.
Have a try. Ireland.
No, Mr. Colby, it's Libya. Now it's Mr. Cairns' turn. What symbol denotes the sign of the zodiac, Aquarius?
It's a water carrier, a person carrying a jug of water.
No, it isn't that. Mr. Kerr?
Wavy lines.
Yes, two wavy lines, one above the other. Mr. Colby, what was the full name of the composer Mendelssohn? The Christian name he used and the surname is in...
Felix Mendelssohn Bartholdy.
Yes, correct. What in American sport is known as the pigskin?
It's the ball in American football.
It is. The German chief of staff in 1914 was the nephew of the chief of staff during the 1870 Franco-Prussian War, and he had the same name. Who was he?
Von Rundstedt.
No. Mr. Greensmith?
Schlieffen.
No. Mr. Cairns?
Von Moltke.
You're right, sir. Von Moltke. And that brings us to the end of the round, the end of the competition, this semi-final. And the final scores are 8 to Mr. Greensmith, 13 to Mr. Cairns, 13 to Mr. Colby, 16 to Mr. Kerr. And so, Mr. Kerr is the winner, and he will be taking part with the other 3 in the final on the 10th of September. Next week, we have that final, and so until then, I bid you goodbye.
The chairman of Brain of Britain 1979 is Robert Robinson. The programme was devised by John P. Witt.